Again, Mudfossil University, excited today, going deep into subatomic particles, electrons, protons, and the non-existent neutrons. Now, let's go down and see what they have to say about these particles. Now, this guy is going to talk about a vacuum cathode ray tube. It's in a vacuum, and they shoot electricity, a high voltage electricity, electrons, from the emitting source to a receiving source. Now, he's going to explain it, and then I'll go from there.
Looking at a cathode ray tube, this is the apparatus that J.J. Thomson used when he discovered the first subatomic particle. It's a pretty simple apparatus. It's a vacuum tube, so we have a glass tube, and all of the air has been sucked out of it. It literally is a vacuum tube. When an electric current is applied to this tube, there's a beam of light that emanates from the cathode, thus the name cathode ray tube. And J.J. experimented with these rays, and he found that they were either deflected or attracted by a magnetic field. Let's take a look. Here's a small magnet, and when I bring it close to the cathode ray, you can see that one end of the magnet actually attracts those rays, and then when I turn the magnet over, the other end will actually repel those rays. Turns out that the end that's repelling, this right here, is the negative pole of the magnet, and of course, like charge.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right here because he's demonstrated exactly what I wanted to discuss. And remember again, this is about 12,000 volts in that area, and even higher. And they push the electrons through this void, which is a vacuum. There is no particles inside that tube other than what's being emitted out of here, and those are electrons. And they only want to get over to here because this has a positive pull. Now, by using that magnet, he can make them say, get out of my way, or come up towards me, depending upon the polarity of that magnet. Now, with this basic, simple setup, we can see that these electrons are being influenced by magnetic fields. And you have to have high voltage to get through there. And I'm going to tell you something funny, because a long time ago, we had equipment that worked on these high voltages, and this other guy who was a brilliant guy, and we were going in to look at some equipment that was having trouble, and it was a cathode ray tube based equipment, and the thing is sitting there smoking and sizzling, and I'm going, oh my God, this thing is destroyed. He said, I don't worry about it, we'll fix that in 5 minutes. I said, what are you going to do? He takes out a roll of black tape and he wraps up the input, because what they do is they short out through these silicon boots and all that was, and it was just fuming and being nasty. And he just wrapped it all up in about 20, 30, maybe 50 layers of black tape, and we left. Never broke down again. Anyway, I could tell you stories you would never believe about the things that we used to do. Okay, so anyway, let's go on from here. A little confusing, but bear with me. It's not that hard. Just free your mind up. Now, protium is hydrogen. That's basically what everybody thinks of as hydrogen, which has one positive particle in the center, they call it a proton, and one electron in the cloud surrounding it, very close to the core. Now, I find that there's some inconsistencies in this particular theory. First of all, there is no reason whatsoever for these two to be kept apart if they are positive and negative. None whatsoever. They would attract each other. They say, oh, there's a weak short force, and there's a strong force, and there's all these kind of gooey little things in there, gluons and so forth. Well, I don't care how many squiggly lines you put in there. If that's a positive, that's a negative, they go together. Plus, they're supposed to be exactly the same charge. They would snap together into a bar magnet. And I believe that's what's happened. However, protons are not the size that they say they are. They're at least half the size of what they say. And the rest of it is flooded with electrons. There is no neutrons. Let's just forget neutrons. So you got to go back to the first particle. How big is the first particle? How does the first particle work? The first particle is a bar magnet. That's the basic, tiniest bar magnet. And that has a positive and a negative. And the negativeness of this core exceeds the positiveness of this core. Just a taste. which forces this negative not to be able to approach the core tightly. So it's held in a region around it. Let me show you that in a practical sense. Okay, this is Latham's crazy machines, and it's an incredible tractor beam magnet. It's basically a toy. And what he has done is this right here is the nuclear core. All right, this is a brass ring, and in that brass ring he has mounted these negative magnets, neodymium magnets. And then in the center, he opposed those negativity by a strong positive, which I'm calling the protons. So here's the negatives, which I say are the electrons, fused together just like a bar magnet with the positive in the core, and that is our nucleus. Now, the electrons exceed the attractiveness of the positive, but the positive somehow has a huge region of influence. So any negatives that are out there will come, but they will not be allowed to touch. You can look, but you cannot touch. Now here's what happens. So now I set it up for you. This is our core, our nuclear core. This is an electron, and it's floating by, and they will never, ever be alone, because the universe is flooded with these electrons, which are light. These are nothing more than light particles, and they are what we all will now know very soon as the ether, which has been known since Plato's time and been poo-pooed because of people wanting to come up with some spectacular other things than reality. That's my opinion. Now, this, watch what happens. All right, here he goes. Boom, that's it. That's a tractor beam magnet. That is quantum mechanics you are seeing right in front of your face with a toy. That will stay held in that grasp of those two little electrons, and it will stay at that. And all the other ones that come in will stack up. Now they're bouncing in and they're forcing this thing to excite. That is heat. And then eventually, and that's getting hotter and hotter and glowing, eventually it will fly away, and when it flies away, it is light. So it's really getting hot. Oop, there it goes, it was light. That is as simple as it gets to show my contention of light is these particles, they flood everything, they flood the cores, and then they stack up around them. And you will never find a core that is alone. They will always try to, the electrons are everywhere, so they're going to come back. Even when the atomic bomb, it blows all of its electrons away, it goes straight up off the Earth because it's being repelled, because the Earth is positive. That mass now will be positive, straight up from the Earth, and you'll see the mushroom cloud suck itself right back together. It's pulling the electrons back into itself. It needs that matter to come back to itself, these negative particles. It is incomplete. That's why the Earth says, get away from me. You're just a positive chunk of nastiness. And it goes up in the air and it pulls all the electrons back, and they fit in the right places, and a lot of them, and some of them they don't. Now you got isotopes. You got things that are radioactive problems everywhere because these bar magnets are all broken up in pieces. And they don't fit back together like they did when God made them. You got to be a tiny bit geeky to understand this, but it's actually pretty simple. They're saying that a hydrogen atom is nothing more than one proton and one electron. All right? Well, guess what? If you took one proton and you added it to one electron, the mass, the two of them together equal a neutron. You see that? And that's what I am saying. I'm saying that the protons are flooded with electrons, and the two of them make up a bar magnet, and the net result is the weight of the neutron that they're looking for, which does not exist. So you always have a neutron except for your hydrogen, which they can't possibly explain hydrogen. No way in the world you can explain hydrogen with the Bohr model. Absolutely no way. It's perfectly explained with electron flood theory. So their Bohr model says we got only one of these and one of these. Snap, they go together. That's just silly. But we do have one of those and one of those, and they are snapped together. And the two of them make up the same thing that you would have in a neutron. Only in the hydrogen atom, you have the positive negatives together in the core, and that is the basic smallest unit you can get in that core. Now, I'm struggling right now with the size of the proton that they claim and the size of the electron, because my contention is that if these protons are these huge things, 1834 times what an electron is, we must have 1834 electrons in, because they say that's what they weigh. A neutron weighs. So we'd have 1835 instead of 1834. We got just a taste more in the neutrons than in the protons. And that will always, 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 always keep the core of the nucleus in a net negative condition. So anything that comes into it, just like that little attractive beam magnet, will be held away. It can't get in there. The protons want to take everything, a huge reign of influence. But the negatives say, we got enough here. Just stay away. Stay out there. Just stay out there. If we need you, we'll let you know. I'm not sure what they do with them out there, Those are the things that float around. And then in addition to those, there's ether everywhere in the universe. Ether is nothing more than sunlight. It's particles that flow from every luminescent body. That's all they are, is electrons. And they have mass. We know they have mass. They can push a little radiometer thing, which is one of those little spinning things inside of a vacuum, and it pushes it around because it bangs into it. It's just the particles. I showed the particles. Well, I'll show them again. Okay, once again, this is light from a red laser. It looks like it's a huge wave coming through here. There's only a particle, you can't even see it in the center here. It would never be exposed until it was forced to crush through an accelerator. And here's the accelerator. You see, that's the same wave. Now, it's being going through a Venturi. And that's a Venturi accelerator, and that is the actual particle. You see, now we can actually see the particle. You don't see those ever. You would never see that unless this was being forced to accelerate. And when it accelerates, everybody in front of it is being crushed. So get out of the way, get out of the way. I say, I can't get out of the way. This thing's out down here. It's got me stopped. And that is the Venturi. And in that Venturi, everything is atomized. Now, you can obviously see that tiny little particle has a huge reign of space that it owns. Get away from me, I am coming through. I own all this. And they say, well, what are we doing? We're just laying around here. And that's these little guys here, these little white dots. Those are the ether particles. They're nothing more than electrons, exactly like this one. Exactly like all those. They're the same things, only they're not moving. Those could become static electricity. You walk through the air, they'll collect on you, you'll discharge into the ground. That is the static electricity. It is also sunlight. Sunlight comes from the sun. It is light. It is particles, obviously. They own a region, obviously. They can concuss, obviously. They glow and they spray out the other side and away from each other because of magnetic repulsion, not because of any flapping waves of photonness. They're just that is all not true. These are particles. They can accelerate. They can crush. They can become plasma. As they get away from each other, they create these patterns. The main one in the center, and then it sets up the regions. Boom, 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 boom. And the ones on the outside can spray anywhere they want, so they just go flying. Now, the reverse concussion creates a reverse electromagnetic force, which is enormous, and it excites all of these particles with an extremely high voltage, low amperage. High amperage, I don't know, not as high voltage, I'm sure, because it's a pretty high voltage. I'm not sure. I got to be honest with you. A lot of this stuff is sort of guesses at this point. But you see what you see. If you can make any other assumption than I am making, then I'd like to know about it. But it's not been challenged. It's not been looked into correctly, and it's been sent to all the major universities, and it's been ignored. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. This could become a fusion Venturi. I don't see why not. If this was high energy particles, the deuterium, tritium and deuterium particles from hydrogens, and they came in here and crushed all together into just a mass where nobody owned anybody. Then what happens is, as they come out, instead of spraying away from each other, all of the particles that were the positive particles would immediately be flooded with electrons. That's the electron flood theory. And the two of them together make the noble gas helium. So you would end up with two protons just jump right together with the electrons that go along with them. That leaves you with one extra electron particle for every one of those little unions, which is a hell of a lot of juice, because that's 1/5 of the mass. It's directly into energy. I mean, this is powerful. And this is not a consumer of anything. It's nothing. You're shooting it through here. It is literally crushing, because there is no other way for these things to get through this. It's fully understood of Venturi. It's not something I just invented. I mean, Rodney Warren and I have been working on this, and Rod actually invented the Venturi with the light. He stumbled across it accidentally, just accidentally, and I noticed that he had these pictures on the internet, and I started going through it. And then Rod and I worked for a year at least or more, and he was fabulous. He's looking for a whole different thing than me. It has nothing to do with the atomic realm of this. He's looking for other dimensions, and looking to see what he literally sees in the light. I'm looking to see what this light displays in the atomic realm. So it was an absolute marriage of magnificence. He never bothered me, and I never bothered him about his stuff. He saw what he saw, I saw what I saw, and it worked out fabulously. And Rodney did a hell of a lot of work on this. Everything I asked him, he did. Never said a word. And I had a lot of things I wanted to know, and he showed me everything. I mean, absolutely unbelievable how skilled he is in this. So anyway, and I could see the right-hand rule. We can see Higgs bosons. We can see and particles that nobody can explain. I'm asking Higgs to explain. CERN to explain it. See, these are supposed to be the Higgs fields that CERN is looking for. These little particles coming out here are the bosons, and they're charged little particles, the little negative electrons, zip, flying through there in an excited state, coming through the accelerator. When they crash into the stagnant air, everything in the air polarizes. Whoop, pops into these fields, plus, all the way around, circling that flying particle. Exactly the same fields you see circling a wire if you put the magnetic filings around, identical. Now, but this is in air, and the only reason they're displayed in air is because of the violent impact of the boson charged particle into the stagnant, non-moving air. All right, they only display for like they step down. The power obviously stepping down. I show that too. And as it steps down, it displays for 2 of these cycles. And this, I believe, is a negatively charged or a reverse charged spinning particle. And that little reverse spinning particle is that white one. Now, if they spin to the right, they slip, and they cause these other particles to slip away from them into these magnificent little exquisite fields. And the particles in the center, you can't even see it. Now, if they spin to the left, they gather. If they spin to the right, they throw the things away. If they spin to the left, they gather them into themselves. That's what happened here. I believe that's my intent. Well, I don't know what else to say. I want CERN to tell me. CERN's the one that seems to know all about this stuff. Let them tell me. They're spending the money. I only spent $100. This thing crashed into this. Or this crashed into this. I mean, well, let me put it this way. This one here, let's forget that one, because that one there is outside this, I believe. As this particle comes through, and I believe as it approaches this field, it begins to create its own field. Why? I mean, I don't understand this, to be perfectly honest, because if it's spinning in the wrong direction, it would smash into there. Maybe it's grabbing power from here, because I see it come through here and it looks dark as it passes this field. And then you have darkness here, I don't know. Is it grabbing? Is it spinning? What is that? This is the things that CERN's supposed to understand. They show those little squiggly lines, little circles and things all over the place. Oh, we understand those. Well, tell me what that is then. As far as I'm concerned, they call this an electron neutrino, which creates an electron shower, which I showed. And this is Cherenkov radiation, which is that high, glowy white energy, which I showed. And as it comes through, it crashes into the media, which is not accelerated like it came from. Now, they say it's an electron neutrino is an accelerated particle, and I say what we have was an accelerated particle. So, same effect, same particle, as far as I'm concerned. And this is what they're looking for at CERN, Higgs event at the Large Hadron Collider. Boom, smash, and they get these fields. That is what they're looking for. We have them. Give us a call, CERN. We can help you out. Okay, I said that I can account for every single thing that they're looking for light, and I believe I can. These are what they're looking for is what is called a boson, and just before it crashes into the media, which creates the Higgs field, the polar circular disk. It's coming out of the accelerator here, and you can see it's stretched. You see how wide these little slots are, how close they are up here? Well, it's obviously slowing down. Now, it's spinning. It's obviously because it's twisting. Now, you would say it's spinning to the left. No, it is not. It's drifting to the left because it is spinning to the right. That means it doesn't get quite as far every time to the next one, so it ends up drifting to the left. And as it slows down, eventually, and very, very soon, it will crash into the media that is the unrestricted, unaccelerated space of the Venturi, and it crashes and becomes the Higgs fields. All right, so just let's leave it at this. The light comes through, just huge regions being disturbed, but a particle is almost nothing. Particle is almost nothing, creates a Cherenkov, lights up the ether, is accelerated, is a particle, comes through the accelerator as boson particles of highly accelerated charged particle carriers, which smashes into the medium that is just floating in space in front of it, which is like a veil in front of it, and boom, it creates these huge disks surrounding them, which are the polar particles that are in the air, and they surround them, and primarily they're attached to water molecules in the air. These are the extra electrons, which are the ether, which I show here, and they are seen here. We saw them before. Then after it comes out of here, and this white particle I showed crashes into another disk, it creates that little particle, little light trumpet I call it. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be a particle that has decayed from light. So light itself, all these particles came through together. None of them is different than the other. One spun backwards, I believe, but they were all from the same source. They were all red laser, and they are all the same size. One of them's opposite charge. Could be antimatter. I have no clue. But it's doing this, and I don't know what that is. Then, we also see this. I didn't really go into this, but I have, and I believe it's a torus, and that comes right out of the Venturi, and it settles into these two shapes that we can distinguish that they are dipoles. There's no question whatsoever. You got white and you got dark. There's no question. And you also have this spike going up and spike going down. The only reason I can take for that is because it's spinning on the right-hand rule and it cascades into the Venturi, and the reverse EMF, which I showed you, those huge reverse waves, causes it to crash and push back and spin to the right again, gathering, because it's going backwards. If it only go straight this direction, spinning to the right, that's what it is. If it goes spinning to the right backwards, that is a gathering. That is gathering and pulling itself in, and it's one way or the other. It's spinning to the right here, and it's spinning to the right, slamming down here with the energy, zoom, and as it hits, boom, it bounces back, gathers, then it starts to accelerate again on the other side, glows, boom, bounces back, gathers. Now, the only time they will do that is when they are concussed. And the only time you ever see that is when it was accelerated. So don't expect to just see these things floating around in the air. They will not do that. You have to put them through this accelerator in order to see them exhibit. So we're seeing all the things, and then of course the right-hand rule is over here, and the particles are shown. I don't know what else to say. It needs to be looked at, and if this thing could possibly do what I'm saying it can do, and it looks like it can do it, it could create plasma from heavy particles. And if that's done, there's a possibility to make fusion from this cold fusion. No reason that you need, to use all the electricity in the world for a second to make a little tiny bit of fusion. No. You could just run forever. And then you, of course, got to be in a vacuum tube, and you got to be able to drag off the excess, which is in the form of electricity. It should be extremely, and if you could make these small, and these are small, what we're doing is only a couple of inches long to do this. You could do this within a couple of inches. If you could do this with fusion with a few inches and not a couple of feet, you could power houses, you could power cars, you could power airplanes. You could fix the whole world. Could be fixed if fusion would work in some tiny little package. All right, Mudfossil University. Just try to save the world today. I'm telling you, somebody should look at this. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.